All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to season 2, episode 22 of the NextGen TCG podcast post Super Bowl. How's your Super Bowl weekend, Zach? What did you do?
Super Bowl weekend was awesome, man. I had some friends over, asked them to grab some food, came over, chilled, watched the game. Felt like now football and Taylor Swift are like synonymous. It's just, I wanted the 49ers to win, and then my mom's texting me, like, go Chiefs, and it's like this brutal, like, family rivalry, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, what have we come to these days?
How much money did you lose betting? How many prop bets did
Oh,
you place?
I stopped betting, man. I actually haven't done sports betting like a year because I look back and I just kept depositing money and not taking any out. And I was like, you know what? Like, this isn't working out. So we need to just stop. So actually, I kind of just stopped. I'll still play table games, but I just stopped sports betting. It's just not healthy.
You know what? Like the biggest thing that I've always been reminded of is that the house always wins, no matter how many good deals that you have. And they do not build all those casinos and high buildings in Vegas by giving away money. So that's how it goes. Did you have you wanted the Niners to win just for a change of pace, or did you actually, are you a Niners fan?
There's so many Chiefs fans like in the hobby that I've met. I know Beamer's a big Chiefs fan. The guy that just got the Goonies house and stuff. He owns Collector's Cash. But I've had some friends who were longtime 49ers fans. I like the Christian McCaffrey story, and it was more like I just don't really care for the Chiefs, so I don't really like the 49ers, but I'd rather them win over Mahomes building a dynasty. Like no one should ever compete with Brady, and he's just getting really close to having an argument.
I got you. I got you. I didn't actually. I didn't watch the majority of the game. I watched the halftime. I'm not a huge football guy, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I watched the halftime show, and then I actually tuned in just for the overtime. And
Ooh.
it was kind of weird because I thought, just based on like my knowledge of sports, I was kind of perplexed why the Niners decided to run first, because it's so you have such an advantage knowing what you have to do if you go on offense second. So I thought that was a really stupid decision. Like, once again, I'm not a huge football guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I just, as soon as the Niners only got 3 points, I'm like, Mahomes for sure. Like, you basically get an extra down at that point, and like, Mahomes is gonna win this now because they only kicked the field goal. So I don't know what the Niners are doing, especially after they won the coin toss there. But what are your
It,
thoughts on the Super Bowl show?
it,
What did you think of Usher's performance?
I mean, it just takes you back. I mean, I remember being in my kitchen living room with MTV, like, yeah, playing, and you're dancing, grooving. So I think there was one like super popular song that Usher didn't play, but it's also like one of his most raunchy songs. So I was like, okay. But I had a friend that was with me and was like, oh man, can you believe they put stripper poles like on the stage for this family performance? And I mean, I thought the beginning was a little slow, like with the dance moves and the singing. That it really picked up quite a bit. And I thought Alicia Keys like missed a note or two, but apparently no one else was really talking about that. I thought he kind of came in and helped her that out a little bit. So
My wife went nuts when Alicia Keys showed up on the stage. She like, Alicia Keys. I was like,
okay.
okay. But yeah, like what you said, I like Usher's a great performer, but at the same time, like other than playing the Super Bowl, when was the last time he was actually kind of like relevant? Like you mentioned it, like, yeah, I was like in my high school days when that
Yeah.
song was pumping. So I thought, yeah, so yeah, he did he did an okay job. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst.
Hmm.
I think like the Katy Perry slash Lady Gaga in recent memory Super Bowl shows definitely better, but it wasn't the worst one. I hated last year's one with Eminem and 50 Cent. I thought that was an awful show, or was that might have been 2 years ago. Last year
Hmm.
might have been the weekend. I can't remember, but anyways, but yeah, Super Bowl weekend. And I'm not a huge football guy, but I did tune in for the overtime as well as the show. So yeah, overall, good times overall. So let's move on to market trends. We are very fortunate because we were actually a little bit late in terms of we scheduled this like half hour ago in terms of when we are going to start. We got a little bit
Hmm.
delayed, but in that time, a bunch of heritage auctions actually finished. So it was kind of like very fortuitous for us. So we have a whole, as you expect for heritage auctions, we have a whole lot of very high end items finishing off. So we will start off with PSA 8, 2010 number 2 World Championship card, finishing off at 45K. And then just kind of in that vein as well, on theme of those cards, we have a PSA 9 2017 number 3 World Championship card, finishing off at 42.5K. So very similar prices. You're kind of, I know that you're in kind of the market for these types of cards. You're kind of keeping an eye on it because you have the ideas of like collecting, just to kind of like start like a Pokemon museum. So you're probably more in tune for the prices of these cards. So I'll let you take the floor on what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first point is like, where are all these high cards coming from? I mean, they just constantly keep hitting the market. Are collectors holding high end cards anymore? Are these just new copies coming up? I know the one of them's a copy I've seen sold to another friend recently. So for at least the 2010, I know that's a copy that's transacted once in the last year. So it's just when the market gets hit with so many rare cards all at once, it's interesting to see how the market reacts, because some things that we'll talk about kind of hold the price and support it, and then some things you kind of see the price come down a bit. And so I mean the difference between the 2010 and 2017, I think, is really the full art, half art. I think people like the full arts a little bit better, and that's why you see that number 3 kind of holding closer to that 40K range. Back in Japan, when a lot of the 3s and 4s were being sold, 35, 40 was kind of the minimum, kind of the entry price point for a lot of them. And then there were some sales above that 40K price point if you weren't one of the first like 2 sales that happened. So it does seem like there's a pretty stable floor there. And when it does come to the World's trophies, it almost seems like people really care like what year as more like as to what artwork. And so getting, a number 3 at the 42.5K, it seems like a very fair price. Like, it doesn't feel like incredibly strong, but it also like doesn't feel weak. It is a PSA 9, and if you're not familiar with grading World's trophies, it's very difficult to grade a PSA 10, and there are very few. I know there's single digits for the number 1 in a PSA 10. It's kind of difficult. So a PSA 9 is incredibly high grade. And so for the PSA 8, I thought the 45K was what was expected. I would actually, if it went higher than that, it would have been kind of odd. So, but this is just kind of what you see, kind of back and forth. And if you hold out for a private offer, you will probably get more than this. But anytime you send an auction, you're just going to let the market determine what the market wants to pay. And sometimes when the market's paid a price over and over and over again, it's just going to come down a little bit. So, how do you feel, Tetra?
I like you're more of an expert on like the pricing of these things, but I think like just going back on the idea of like full arts, I have never experienced a full art world's trophy in my hands, but
Mhm.
apparently it's just like kind of it's something that you have to just like experience, because there's a lot of texture on those cards,
It's
which also
magical.
yeah, which adds to like the grading difficulty as well to
Mhm.
them, especially they're handed on stage, edge wear, all that type of stuff. But yeah, one of these days that I would really like to experience a World's Trophy just firsthand, just to kind of see what all the hubbub is all about. Let's move on to a little bit of a dip. A little bit of a dip, and we're gonna be talking about CGC nines, both nines, of snap cards. So snap cards have really kind of emerged within the last couple of years from being fairly scarce in the hobby to a whole lot of them showing up kind of all at once. So first off, we'll start with the CGC 9 Snap Chansey, finishing off at 47.5K. And then we also have the CGC 9 Coughing, finishing at 27.5K. And just with the CGC 9 Coughing, that is a huge dip from where it was several months ago. I think we talked about it late last year that we set like the base floor price for basically all snap cards at that 50K range, just based on like rarity and how difficult they are to obtain. In general, they don't grade that high because snap cards are notoriously always off-centered. So yeah, I think this probably ties into just once again all of them coming to the market all at once. Coughing, not that huge of I don't think there are that many other than Swole. There's not a whole lot of coughing collectors out there. And as well, time of year. Time of year is like we're still in February. We are in the downturn of the hobby. So yeah, I think all those things tied together.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts when you look at it, and I'm just surprised how many big cards are just coming in. You know, the PSA 10 coughing was 50K, so you're like, okay, if the minimum stat price is 50K, but the 10 went for 50K, you have to think that if a 9 comes up, it would go lower than 50K. But even then, it's like a snap is so hard to get. There's not that many of them. I mean, beyond like extra copies, which has just been the narrative, you know, this whole like last year or so. You know, it's hard to know, you know, unless you have that true provenance from the winner. But 27.5 does feel like a dip. I think that goes to show that coughing is just kind of a weaker Pokemon. But 27.5K is still a lot of money. I mean, how many people do you know that have that amount of money to spend? And then how many of them do you know that want to put that in a coughing? And so I have people all the time that reach out that, you know, they like have a car like, oh, this is like 10K, this, that. And then I'm like, you know, once you like go up these price tiers, you know, you look at all the cards available in the tier, it's not like, do I want to buy, you know, this coughing for 27.5 because that's a good card. It's that I have so many other options at this price point. I mean, you could buy like 3 screen sets for that now. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But it's, you know, it's one of those things that's just like, you just open up to much, much more. And so I think maybe someone wanted to get in and, you know, get a snap for a good price. That could be the buyer. But it also could be the person who maybe has another couple snap cards. They just want the coughing and they're willing to support it up to this point. So, you know, every auction takes 2. We'll say that over and over and over again. So there are at least 2 people that were pushing the price up to this point. I am surprised with the Chansey kind of going sub 50. It did have the previous sales. I think it was like in the 70s or maybe even higher privately. That one was surprising because it is such a more popular, you know, Pokemon. But again, a lot of the Chansey collectors I know, you know, that do push the higher side. A lot of them, you know, it's hard to touch that 50K price point. You know, they can touch some of the lower ones, but it's like, do they consolidate their collection and chase the Snap Chansey? Maybe they do. So it's just weird push and pull. I really thought the Chansey would perform a little bit better.
Yeah, very interested to see what the next round, like if another round of snap cards come to market. I think the next one will be kind of very telling of where the snap market is. But I also I don't want to continue to kick CGC in the shins with prices, but we also have a CGC 10 non-pristine first edition thick stamps art. I think although some people don't really care, I think it's also important to say that is a thick stamp Zard because that's generally more desirable. Finishing off at 37.5K. So obviously CGC 10 versus PSA 10. PSA 10, you're looking at least 200,000, 190 to 200,000 for a PSA 10 Zard. CGC 10, you're basically looking at PSA 9 pricing at that point. So what are your thoughts of that?
I mean, it feels fair. Like it doesn't feel like a super dip. You know what I mean? I know Kanto Shark posted that there was a pretty high sale that was private of a CGC 10 Zard, and so I don't think that price was shared. But he mentioned that it was a really strong sale, and I trust you know that. I just don't know. Was it 50K, 60K, 80K? It's hard to say. And this is a card that has sold over 100K in the past. It does have multiple 80, 90K sales, but it also has a 30K sale. So we can't forget about that. And so it feels like one of those scenarios where the market continues to churn these out. You know, are these the Beckett 9.5s that are getting swapped to the CGC 10? You know, are these strong PSA 9s that are getting bumped to CGC 10? You know, I get tons of messages from people that, hey, I want a first ed 9 base R, but I want it to be really, really strong. And it's like, okay, well, you and everyone else knows that's a CGC 10. So, I mean, everyone else is looking for that. So it truly, if you want like a really, really strong PSA 9, buying the CGC 10 just seems like a great, you know, way to get that because it honestly just kind of solidifies like the quality range you're looking for. A lot of the PSA 9 Zards that are going, you know, a little over 20, maybe a little sub 20, like a lot of them don't feel like the best cards. A lot of them feel like yes, it's a 9, but it's like, is that the 9 you really want in your collection? And so I've given advice to people that just say like you should just pay a little bit more, get the CGC 10, because you're not paying 200K for the PSA 10, but you're also getting what you could arguably say is like an extremely strong PSA 9. So I like where this is at. I think if they became less available, the price would go up. But it's, to me, it's still just a value play. I like this price point for this card.
And finishing off at exactly that price, we have first edition Neo Destiny, first edition box, finishing off at 37.5K. Before I get your thoughts on the price, I kind of I want you, since you're the WotC expert here, to give a breakdown of the big hits of this box, your hollow chances as well as your shining chances, because this is obviously the Neo Destiny box, and the biggest hits are the shining cards that you can find inside. So give us a breakdown and the refresher of the contents of a Neo Destiny box.
For sure. So Neo Destiny is the third set to contain secret rares for Pokemon. It's also the last set to have first edition cards. So all these are kind of the final first edition cards for English Wizards of the Coast. There are 8 shinings in the product, with Shining Charizard being the biggest of the hits. You also have Shining Celebi, and then a beautiful Shining Mewtwo, which I think is an epic artwork. I think only the Expedition Mew really rivals that artwork, in my opinion. You're going to get multiple Shinings per box. When you open this, you have a really good shot. And the first set, Zard 10. I don't know if it's around 20K or 15K, but it always seems to, it's a 5-figure amount. It always seems to flirt sort of between, or maybe it's down to 12. I know the Gold Star Zard is around the 20, and the Crystal Zard's up there. But really, when it comes to English, like early vintage Zards, you only really have 3 that aren't the first ed base. And that's going to be the Gold Star, the Crystal, and the first ed Shining. And there are a lot of people that prefer the Shining, over the Crystal or over the Gold Star. But a lot of people are either in one of those 3 camps as to their favorite sort of vintage Charizard. And so again, the set, you're going to get 12 basically hits in a box. I think the set has like 6. I need to look this up, but however many hollow foils. Has tremendous edge wear on the hollow foils on the right-hand side and the top, a lot of silvering and stuff right out of the box. Very difficult to grade. I remember when I was finishing the set, the last card I needed was like Pop Zero. And it's like I just need someone to grade one, but they were all just so banged up. It was so frustrating. And then if you look at this set, you go through the artworks, you have some of the most beautiful, gorgeous artworks between dark and light Pokemon, like Jolteon with the Togepi sitting there. It's an awesome set to collect. So is that a good overview, or should I tell people what I think about the price?
So how many shinings? So you said there's 8 shinings in total for the set,
Yeah.
for the Destiny set. How many shinings could you expect to get out of one box?
I believe 3. It's 2 to 3, and I think 3 was the last time I checked. I didn't look this up before the podcast, but I think it's 3 per box.
One thing also to note with those shining cards, I think we talked about before that, like, even though like there's also like you called it an error, I don't really qualify it as an error, but sometimes like the actual shining hollow overlay is somewhat can be off-centered on those cards as well. I actually sold a shining Mewtwo last year that had an off-centered overlay for the shining sections. So but yeah, good breakdown. I like the fact that it's the last first edition stamp box, the last of that era. Then we moved on obviously to the Neo the Expedition, as well as Skyridge and Aquapolis, which completely revamped the whole design of the cards. I just touch on the pricing of like, so when I jumped into the hobby, it was always crystals are at the top, and then the shinies are to slide underneath it. During the pandemic, you actually kind of saw a little bit of a shift, and for a couple of months there, the Shining Zard actually overtook the Crystal Zard. I know some people love the Crystal Zard I think people love the like overall idea of Crystal Pokemon, but the actual artwork on the Crystal Zard was very polarizing. Some people just thought it's like just super generic. It looks almost exactly like the Charizard from the anime show. Which some people love, some people hate. But the Shining Zard is just super unique, right? It's also one of those points in time where I think that Pokemon hadn't really flushed out what color shiny Pokemon were supposed to be at that point. Some could argue that it looks black. To me, it doesn't look like a black Charizard. in my personal opinion. But yeah, it's been interesting to follow kind of like the history of like Shining versus Crystal, the two camps. People argue for what they like. Just refresher on like price, 37.5K. What are your thoughts?
I feel like it's I see buy prices that are just over 30, and so I know this is above buy prices that I see, but I feel like this is a 40K box. In my head, it's a rare box. It's a box that's always sort of pushed a little bit on the limits. I think some people would probably argue this is a strong sale. I still believe long term, like it's 40 K plus, and really only above this is like Skyridge and Deoxys and a few things like that. So I would like to see this box at 40. So 37.5 is very, very close. Solid sale. And I know there's probably a few people that would have loved to have gotten it for a deal. And it's one of those things that if you want one, you sometimes just got to bite the bullet and
All right, lifeblood of the hobby. We have a first edition based a booster box finishing off at 200,000. As always, right in line with the price of a PSA 10 Charizard. Zach, where are all these boxes coming from, man?
it never ends, man. It never ends.
Where are all these first edition booster box coming from?
It's got to be the same box, just not getting paid. Oh, I guess we'll relist it. Oh, 200K again? What do you know? Like, I don't know. It never ends, man. It never ends. There's got to be someone that's like got 12 of them. It's like, all right, one a month, go. They probably got some through the year. Who knows? I truly wonder if it's the same source. I feel like it almost has to be.
Okay, but price wise, I don't think there's really much to talk about. Pretty much in line of where we are with the market with Pokemon. Are we like when are we gonna get back to 400,000?
Maybe when they stop coming up, man.
Yeah, when they stop coming up, that's true.
It's like, who knows? Is it the same two bidders on every auction? That just because it takes two. It's like if one guy doesn't bid, it's just go for 100. Like we don't know because it's always 200. Like why it never changes. So.
It was 200 on the nose too, right on the nose. It wasn't like 200, like 500 or anything like that. It was 200 on the nose. Anyways, but. Not like price wise, like nothing too spectacular, but we need to know.
It's 200K. Nothing spectacular.
It's a good litmus test for where the hobby is at. All right, so we also have from Rare Candy. So those are all the heritage auctions that we just mentioned. So in a complete set of 1999 SSBs finished off on Rare Candy. We had the PSA 10 finishing off at 156K. That's the number one. A number two, PSA 8 finishing off at 70K. And then we have a number three, PSA 9 finishing off at 77K. One thing I wanted to kind of talk about is so this is where we're at what's more important? The actual like award of 2 versus 3 or the actual grade of PSA versus PSA 9. And both are pretty similar in price, about a 7K difference, which when you get to this kind of tier of card is a little bit inconsequential. Just first off, talk about what you thought the PSA 10 price at 156K. This is like the Mac Daddy. PSA 10, number one. So this is kind of like the bar has been set of what this card in terms of market cap is going to reach. But then let's just talk about the PSA 8 and PSA 9 number 2 and 3.
Yeah, so for the SSBs, the artworks don't really change, that much. It's not like a different pose from Mewtwo or anything like that. It's really just like the colors and stuff in the back. So for PSA 10, it actually does feel like a fairly good price given like the other comparables like the TMB, that's out there, and some of the snaps and some of like a lot of the other sort of high end cards that do exchange. Like 156 does feel like a little above, kind of where the market is valuing a lot of that at. Again, it is a PSA 10, it is a SSB. I know some people they like SSB in particular, over some of the other trophies and stuff that are out there. But at the same time, the peak price for this card was, at least that I know, was 250K privately. And there was someone that posted one for sale, I think in 2021, peak hype, and it sold like basically within a week, I believe, for 200, the asking price. So the buyer was interested right away. And so it is down, about 100K or so. But given the market, everything that's out there, it's not a bad price. And then, the 8 and the 9 at 70, I mean, that still does feel like pretty good. I mean, you look at, what the Pikas were going for earlier. I mean, these are still above that. The market's still saying that we value these early vintage trophy cards slightly more. Now, it is below the Pikas, the 97s, the 98s, that, this, and that. So it feels like a really healthy, point in the middle. And I like where these price points are at. I think if it was lower, I'd be a little concerned. If it was higher, I would also understand. Like it could definitely go higher, in my opinion.
I think we're kind of like on the same page here, but I want you to first, second, and third, that era of trophy cards. How do you arrange what you want between the trophy Pikas, SSB, as well as TMB?
It's always a trophy Pika. If I could own 3 non-trophy Pikas and 1 trophy Pika, I'd rather have a trophy Pika.
So what's number two?
Like number 2, another trophy Pika.
No, like, well, let's just say like you have so you have trophy Pikas at number one. In the number 2 slot of that era, is it either SSB or is it TMB?
I think most people would prefer SSB. If you look at like the price points and what TMB sort of means and the history, I like the idea of getting an executor, trophy. It matches kind of a lot of the chases that I've sort of gone through. That makes sense. If they're the same price point, I would pick an SSB. I mean, I think that's
I think the majority of the hobby are the same way. SSB, trophy Pika's number 1, SSBs is number 2, and then TMB at number 3. So if you have money to burn, if you have money to burn. Speaking of burning money, how do you like to light $30,000 on fire, Zach?
Oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. That sounds not fun at all.
Not fun at all. Well, someone did it. Someone lit $30,000 on fire, basically. So we have a master's key that finished off at 36K, which was a BGS 9.5. But originally, someone went BGS 10 hunting here, because originally this card was a PSA 10. And it finished off at 66K. So whoever bought it and tried to get it into a BGS case took a $30,000 hit. So what are your thoughts? Oh, first, let me offer my thoughts. Okay, if you were like, it's a ballsy move, which I agree with, but I feel like once I got it back from BGS at 9.5, I just like, man, this is not going to go well for me. Let's just try to get back in the PSA 10 case. You know what I mean? At this point, I wouldn't risk sending it to auction. But let me hear what your thoughts are.
Like, why would you not send it back to PSA, or why wouldn't you send it to CGC? I mean, that's probably what I would have done. If anything, if you really like love Beckett and that's your grading company, and a lot of people from Dallas love Beckett, like I would go send it back for review. Like you could send it in the case for review and get a bump. And I've heard stories of people sending a card back 4 different times and getting a bump each time, like one subgrade going up a half point. So like it does happen. But if you're going to do that and then auction it, that just feels like someone needed cash, like someone needed the sale. It doesn't feel like a very logical thing. So,
you know what was, Zach?
You know what was? I don't.
It was very poor grade optimization.
What's the opposite of optimization? Like de-optimization?
I forgot who coined that. I forgot who grade optimization. I forgot
probably
who
Dan. Probably got to catch them all.
I think we talked about grade optimization before. I think Dan. Shout out to Dan. I know he watches the podcast, but very poor grade optimization. All right, so just last thing on market trends, we want to talk about just like. So when we talk about like investing, one of the big things that we always talk about is kind of like exclusive artwork. But these next so generally if a card only has one set print of an artwork, it's considered more valuable. Prime example of this, probably Trophy Kangaskhan. That artwork has never been, other than like an actual sticker, it's never been in a TCG form. It's never been actually reprinted again. So generally the cards with kind of like exclusive artworks are valued a little bit higher in the hobby. But these new next 2 set of cards, the Dauki Points cards of the Umbreon and Espeon, finish extremely higher than the Undaunted / Prime cards. So obviously these are player promo cards. The Umbreon finishing off 35K, the Espeon finishing off at 16K. I actually own the Espeon. I never got a chance to buy the Umbreon when I was still collecting. But I did buy a shit ton of Undaunted and Prime Umbreons and S. I have a ton of these cards, like a whack ton of them. I was buying like I was buying like I think I was buying like Umbreons at like $100 a piece,
Oh my gosh.
and like Espeons at like $60 a piece. It didn't make any sense. Card Rush was just auctioning them off every single week.
I mean, it's crazy how some of the Japanese, made certain cards extremely hard to get through the play points. And Chase, I know there's a lot of commentary around the Gold Star Umbreon, today. So I think Tetra, you seeing it in English and chasing it and getting it for $100 each. I think that's just like a next gen sort of like, or a next level like play, big brain play, if I can make that pun there. And so I think it's awesome. I mean, there's certain things that just they feel different, like. And you got like the Toxicroak Gold Star that came out in the set a couple years ago, and a lot of people buy them like $2 a piece, and it's like it only came out in English, didn't come out in Japanese, so maybe people are trying to make a. I mean, who knows? But it's one of those things where like yes, it's rare. A lot of people don't recognize how rare certain things in Japan are. I think there may be just like a language barrier there, and a lot of the American like mindset or the collector mindset outside of Japan, I should say it that way, because that includes Chinese and European and all that, is to sort of chase the rare and to chase the things that are going to appreciate, to have that sort of investor mindset. Whereas Japanese culture a lot of times is to, earn and collect, and then not necessarily to do this for an investment piece. So I think the difference in culture and like the language barrier is probably why some of these things took longer to appreciate. It's probably why, in 2015, I passed on buying a number 1, 2, and 3 for 10K for the Pikas, because it just doesn't click and register as much. So yeah, massive big brain play. I want to see your 100 Umbreons and Espeons in English someday. But no, it's something that's making more and more sense when it comes to the Daisuke pricing jumping up.
All right, moving on to our main topics of the week. We had something that's kind of cool, very Canadian, kind of brings up memories of the Logan Paul sealed first edition case. But very recently, a full case of 1979/1980 OPG hockey cards were found, sealed case. Real sealed case, because this is actually being auctioned off by Heritage Auctions. I think it finishes off on like February 22nd. I think the auction closes. As of right now, the bid is over $1 million. But what's so special about this box is that it contains the holy grail of hockey trading cards, and that is the Gretzky rookie card. And I'm sure that our friend SM Pratt is very excited about this auction, because I think he's a cross collector, but he's also a hockey fan. So I think like the rookie Gretzky is it's a very iconic card. So if you break it down math wise, there's estimated to be probably around 20 of the Gretzky rookies in this box altogether. So yeah, of the estimated 7,600 cards of 48 packs, 10 cards per box, there's estimated to be around 20 Gretzky rookies inside of them. This card, extremely difficult to grade, mainly because the we talk about like Scyther with his scythe. These cards are actually cut with a wire. They cut them with a wire, and I know that PSA takes into account like that the fact that it is cut by a wire in terms of like grading edge work. I can't bring up. I'll look it up while you're talking when you give your thoughts about this. How many PSA 10 examples? But what do you think about this find of like it almost seems like surreal to me that this is actually happening. What do you think of this find?
It is utterly insane. I mean, this would be like someone finding a pallet of Skyridge in like 20 years or 30 years from now. It's like, how did no one ever talk about it, or how did it not come up? It's one of those things where it's like, I mean, it just doesn't happen. Like it's very difficult to find. And it kind of also tells you how large the hobby is and how large like the market is and how large the world is. That like there's this many people that know Gretzky. There's this many people. There's so many people that just like love cards and this and that, and it never surfaced until now, or maybe someone was aware of it, kept a secret. I mean, talk about a killer secret. But it's once people kind of age out, like once you get to that sort of like human like age like lifespan, you go through grandpa's closet, you go through the attic, and oh, what's this or that, and you go to a garage sale, and it's like eventually people figure out like what these things are. I just hope that no one's like throwing out this stuff. But it takes time. It kind of amazes you that there could be all this popularity around such a great career for the greatest hockey player ever, and then this finally comes out. So it tells you to never let your hopes die if you think that there's something that could be out there that could come up eventually. Like it's everything is always possible. It's wild.
It also kind of holds hope that like if you have like if you're in Canada, because this was an inheritance, like the box was passed down as an inheritance. So man, what an inheritance, right? It's like,
Yeah, that's killer.
dude. So I just looked it up. There are two PSA 10 examples of the Gretzky rookie. The last one sold in 2020 publicly for on Heritage Auctions, actually, for the staggering price of basically 1.3 million, 1.29. So yeah. That's,
It's nuts.
PSA price value guide for a recent sold one, like if you try to sell today, is around valued at 2.5 based on the PSA site. But 20, if you get 20 of them out of this box, first off, do you think this box is gonna be opened to whoever buys it, or do you keep it sealed?
It will be opened eventually, whether it's the current buyer, and there's so many people that do value plays, and there's so much more money in sports. Like the person sending this to auction just tells me like right away, like there are so many people in sports that just have millions and millions of dollars like ready, that are just on the side. Like I don't feel like Pokemon is nearly as deep with that. So if it goes for a good price, I could see someone buying it as like an investment play. But eventually, like this will be open. So someone will have more money than any of us could ever imagine, and they will open it and enjoy it. And it won't matter how much it costs. It's all about chasing Gretzky, appreciating that career and everyone else from that year.
I think it's probably a store that buys it. To be honest with you, I don't think it's gonna
Mhm.
be. I don't think it'll be an actual individual. I think it'll either be a store or some other corporation that opens it. So, what do you think this box finishes off as? Floating
Man,
just above $1 million right now. But what do you think the final price is?
I am not like
I
confident
don't know.
enough
I
to put the
have no
price in. Like
idea.
I mean, I would literally just count up the Gretzky's and assume that they're all going to be eights and nines, just given that they already sort of get a little buffer for the cut being rough anyway. And then I would just multiply like the 9 price and then multiply by like 60%, and that would be like a sort of like a, hey, if you do this you're going to get this, and plus you get all these extra things out of it. Like a lot of people that are buying it for value are not buying it to, they're not going to bid at the max whatever. They're going to bid a price that like guarantees some sort of room if they just put some work into it, because money's expensive these days. It's costs a lot to borrow money, it costs a lot to tie up capital. Like, sometimes when people buy this, like their goal is to, kind of churn out of it real fast. So, I know people don't want to preserve things, keep things the way they are, but if there's money to be made, someone will do it for the money and not, for the love of the card. And that's something you just kind of, realize
Yeah,
more and more the more time you spend in the hobby.
the absolute purest collector in me would love just to see it stay in the sealed case. But I think as soon as this auction ends, and maybe it could be next week, following week, 6 months down the line, I think I'm with you, that it is going to be publicly open, probably
Mhm.
in the most elaborate way possible. Maybe they fly the man himself in to do it. I can see like a Logan. Honestly, I can see like Logan Paul buying this. I'm thinking, listen, I can
I
I can
mean,
buy the box for like a couple $1 million. Hopefully, I don't find GI Joe cards in there again. I like invite Gretzky down, like stretch some content out of it, recoup some money with the content I create, recoup some money with the Gretzky's that I find. Like I can see a play there just for clout.
just going live and whatnot Friday night 8 p.m. Just gonna crack a Gretzky case. Tune in. Let's bid on some packs.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
hear you.
Who knows? Something like that happens. I'm
Okay,
just making a joke here.
we're gonna take a play down here. We're gonna talk about We're gonna talk about the Van Gogh Pika reprint because I know you predicted it, Zach. You sent me a video on it, like they're reprinting this card, and then like I'm not, I don't want to like crap on people because like we're in the content creation game. We know that you need to make titles on thumbnails as clickbaity as possible. Like but the video that you sent me, it was like Van Gogh reprint. Investors are gonna panic, and at this time, I'm just thinking to myself, man, like you would have like if honestly, if you were investing in Van Gogh Pika, that would be like the most idiotic play that I've ever seen in my entire life because no one in this hobby who has any sense of the hobby whatsoever or any sort of knowledge in the hobby would have told you or have thought that Van Gogh long term would have been an investment strategy because based on everything that we know about the card, its release. But yeah, no one was investing in Van Gogh Pika. Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I like the card. I like the crossover. I like a lot of things about it, but the risk is that like Pokemon is not like like people making money on them and these investors and they want this in the hands of people. They want people playing it. They want people going to the museum and getting it. If they find out that employees are stealing, three of them got fired for this and that, like it's like they're just going to print it to smithereens. And so like I think you got to figure out where the price point settles at. You got to get to the point where they're like, "Hey, we're not printing this." I mean, as long as that museum is up, and as long as like everyone feels like people are being cheated, like you got to think it's a wholesome, good hobby where people just kind of they enjoy it with their friends and their kids, and it's a kid friendly hobby, and they're going to do everything they can to level the playing field. And so once it settles out, whether it's $50 or $20 or whether it's $200, who knows? From there, I think it'll be good. But this 100,000 reprint is literally a reaction to all the negativity that's out there. But yeah, it's a risk, man. It's a risk. If they did a textured full art, maybe I'd be more jump. You could jump on it a little faster, but
just on like the grading scale, I think the last time we talked about it, it was like at 8,000 PSA 10 examples, which is absolutely insane. That number is probably like 12,000 right now. But anyways, just like price versus grade ratio. So pretty much the PSA 9, it's the price of raw packs is just slightly above what a PSA 9 costs. So basically, the only way you're going to recoup money in terms of grading is if you hit that 10 price threshold. If you want to talk about investing investing in Van Gogh, if you're talking about like buying a bunch of raw, it's thin margins unless you hit the 10, very thin margins. So PSA 9, you're basically losing money at that point. So if you want like investment strategies, that's something that you should probably consider, which bodes nicely as well into our next topic, which is PSA pricing updates. PSA lowered some prices for Zach. Can you believe it?
No, I don't believe it whatsoever.
Can you believe it? All right, so that's a little bit of clickbait because they did not lower fees on bulk whatsoever. They basically lowered fees on their premium services. What they did do is they lowered not guaranteed wait times because there's no such thing as guaranteed wait times, but they lowered their estimated wait times on bulk services. So originally that was at 65 days. That has been dropped down to 45 business days estimated. TCG bulk, same thing, 45. Value on the non-collectors club exclusives from 65 days to 45 days. Prices remain relatively the same, exactly the same. Bulk, $19 a card. TCG bulk, $15 a card. Value, $25 a card. But they did lower fees on express service levels. So your 10 days, 150 to 129. Super Express, 5 estimated business days, 300 to 249. And walkthrough, 5 estimated business days from 600 to 499. So let me you grade. You grade a lot, or you have graded a lot in your past. I don't grade. I send them to people to grade. But so what do you think on the lower business estimated turnaround dates as well as the lower fees on the faster service levels?
Why does it still cost so much to grade? You know, it's like if you're gonna do bulk and you're gonna push it through, like okay, I get it. Like that should be like $12, you know, max. I think for everyone. You know, if you're gonna send like more than one, if you're gonna send just like one card in, like maybe it should be 15, you know, or $18 a card. But like if it requires like a higher service level or you know more work or more authentication, this or that, like then it's like you know charge like $50 a grade, or you know if it's like it takes two people or three people or you need to ask a question this or that, you know charge a little bit more. But I just you know unless like you want the card back like same day, you truly want like a quick turnaround, I still think you know it's a little high, and I get that it's revenue. I get that excuse me, I know they're a private company and they have to, you know, look good for the investors, and you keeping that price, that revenue per card high is a key metric for them. But I think long term that the price of grading for across all the companies is going to continue to come down. It's going to become less of a function of how hard it is to find graders and, you know, the operations piece of it. It's going to become more of a function of like collectors just realize like it shouldn't, you know, be $100 to grade a card that comes out this year. That's, you know, it just, I don't know. I wish that they would come down more, and until people, you know, stop sending, like they're just going to keep the price the way they are. So, I think we'll see these continue to come down. I just wish it was lower.
Just to, like talk about Pokemon because that's in the our wheelhouse. So regardless, or basically, because if you didn't know, if you send in a card of which is with a perceived higher value and you send it in bulk, you could actually get taxed or they add like a surcharge for higher value cards. But I think I don't know if you're gonna agree with this, but the general consensus that I've always gotten in the hobby, this is something that Charlie's talked about, other people have talked about, Dan have talked about. Basically, just to send everything bulk. Like obviously, you don't send maybe not send a first edition Zard bulk, but like if you have like middle to high, like regardless, send it through bulk. If you don't want it, and then maybe you can avoid that extra surcharge, and you let PSA decide if they are going to tax you a little bit more in terms of the pricing. I think it's something that they could correct me if they're watching this if I'm wrong. But everything I've always heard from people in the hobby is regardless of the value of the card, just send it in bulk and let PSA deal with it. I know that we're a little bit disappointed that bulk prices, although the actual 20 days less guaranteed turnaround time is always nice, especially coming out of the pandemic when cards are being held forever and companies are going bankrupt like Luckens because the cards are just staying in servicing so long. But I know that $19 is a far cry from what we were a couple of years ago. But you've said this before: if bulk becomes too cheap, like it's not feasible for PSA just because they
Mhm.
just have way too much inventory. If you guys kind of want to touch on that again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just way too much inventory demand. I mean, I think one way to counteract it is like if you get people to send in sets, you know, it's like if you send them like, you know, 50 cards from the same set and or maybe the set's older, like one card each, or I don't know, something like you want to establish rules to that help collectors and help sort of your core customers. Dealers are really important to the hobby because they have liquidity and this and that and group submitters and stuff. But you know, like it's going to get to a point where you know, you can buy a Prism sports box, you can grade every card, and if there's money to be made, like there's people that would do it, and there's multiple people that would do it, to like very high quantity levels, like hundreds of thousands of cards, and so PSA still has extremely strong you know demand. The reason they haven't lowered prices is because so many people still send in at these prices, and if they get too many cards, like you said, Tetra, they're just not going to be able to meet the service level. So I wish there was a way to get to those lower because the goal isn't like to lower the price and then have everyone send. The goal is to lower the price and the people who want to complete their collection or they're holding out or they want to complete their set that they can send in and they feel like they're getting good value. You just want to do what's best for the hobby. So yeah,
Yeah,
I know you talk. Go ahead.
just tie into yourself. Like I know that you mentioned before that you like in terms of like WotC, you have like a whole bunch
Oh yeah.
of pack fresh mint cards that it just doesn't make sense to send right now, just because $19 you in terms of like what you need to get graded to finish your sets versus using that capital to invest into something else. Like it doesn't really make sense to do so. And like if they lowered like if they lowered bulk pricing, like that'd be fantastic for you to capitalize as a collector. But what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of companies like multi-million-dollar companies sending in, like you said, $200,000-$300,000 worth, 300,000 slabs, and it's just it doesn't work. It does it like people will abuse abuse the system basically.
Yeah, and it's like for my sets, I still have like a lot of unlimited cards left, and like I have the cards raw. Yes, I could send like in this set and pay $1,000, for the grading fee, and maybe I hit the ones or maybe I don't. But the crazy part is like prices of some of these cards are continuing to come down. Like I know we talk a lot about high end here and super high end, and there's a lot of WotC first ed 9s that are like $100 that really shouldn't be $100. Like I feel like that's too good of a price given modern what everything else is pricing at. But you kind of miss a lot of the commons and uncommons kind of mixed in between, and like you might see the buy nows for 60, 70, $80 on those, but the auctions are like $30 or $40 or sometimes $20, depending on if it reaches enough people on eBay or whatever platforms out there. So at some point it's like I'm 80% of the way done for commons and uncommons, and I've finished all the rares. And so it's like at some point it's like do you just buy the specific card you need for $30 a card versus grading a card you have raw that may or may not get a 10 at $14 a piece? Because if you grade and get a 9, then you have something you need to sell if you're not a 9 collector. So sometimes just being patient, like honestly, just creates the opportunity for you. And like just buying specific cards for me may actually be a better option than grading raw, super high quality inventory. It's I don't know. It's a weird thought experiment to think through.
All right, and I'm gonna let you finish off with a new label from PSA.
Going blue.
We're going blue,
baby. Everyone's gonna think we're Wolverines fans now. Michigan, national championship. So PSA, if you're not familiar, they grade the card and the autograph when you send in a card that's been autographed on the card. And so what a lot of people are doing, including myself, is if you had a card that was in poor condition, so let's say the card would be a PSA 4, and then you just get the card autograph. Let's say you went to an arena event and you got a beautiful arena signature and it's signed perfectly, and that card gets a 9 or a 10. If you got that card dual graded, it'd be a 4 and a 10. But you say, that 4 didn't look very good. I actually don't want the card to be graded. I just want the auto 10. And so, I've got a staff Arena Charizard where there's a big crease to the card. And I sent it in. It says card authentic and then auto grade 10. But you only see one grade in that card and it says a 10. And so it's like, oh, it looks so much better than seeing like a 2 or a 1 that card probably would get because it's a big crease up and down the side. And so it looks great in the case because it's laid flat. And so what PSA has said is, hey, this isn't given the right direction. It's kind of misleading to people to see a red label and then see one grade. It's really the auto grade, not the card grade, because card grade has so much more of an impact on value. And what's the core question for grading card companies is establish some sort of third party assessment that helps two parties sort of exchange a good or an asset where they're the ones kind of helping this identify it. So long story short, the blue label is going to replace the red label in cases where the card is not given a grade and only the autograph is being graded or authenticated is what I believe. So it will hopefully deter some of the people who are trying to mislead people or this or that. I think the argument for misleading people is very easy to make. Although I've never sold a card that I've gotten signed or any autographs that I've bought. And so that staff card, I still have it. I really like it. I think getting a signed card is a very special experience that you can share with an artist. And so I have a lot of cards that I just get it, where the card's authentic and then it has a grade because it just looks better. So when you have it on a shelf at home and you look at it, like it just looks nicer. I think people just want things to look nicer. So those will now be blue labels going forward.
Bluntly, I think it's stupid. I think it's the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
That's awesome.
Honestly, just keep it. I'm a consistency type of guy. I like to keep all the labels consistent, and I like my PSA labels to be red. If I own any CGC labels, I like them to be blue. I think it's dumb, to be honest with you. I think your biggest flag is the fact that it says authentic on it, like authenticity. Like just once it says authentic, I know it's an authentic card, and then I can kind of you're not getting it, it's not being graded whatsoever, so you don't need to do any self grading by yourself, and you're not going to get any grade with the blue label as well. I don't know. I think it's dumb. I think it's dumb. I think you're just like, I don't know who you're misleading with anyone. Like, are you not reading? Are you not reading the label of the card that you're about to buy? The fact that it says authentic, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I love your take. You're so unfiltered all the time. It's so awesome. It's like one of my favorite things. You're just like, it's dumb. Just no. PSA also had green labels for custom cards.
I
So
know. Like if you, but you get those green labels, the autographs authenticated as well. It's just like you already have a market. Why? Well, you could. Why don't you just use the green labels? Why? Like why don't you just use? Why do you need to use blue ones? Just like come on, man. Just
but you
keep
know
it
what
all
the
red.
hobby you know what the hobby wants the most? You know what the hobby constantly tells you what they want the most?
They want tens. I know.
No,
But
they want a black label. It's like just make
oh
the
my
label
god.
black and everyone
Oh
will
my
want it.
god. No, no.
Make the tens. You like the PSA red label?
I like consistency, and I think like I feel like you're not giving people enough credit if you think that people are gonna be misled by the fact that they can't read the word authentic on a card. My two
Hey,
cents.
I hear you're not a true collector unless you collect the rainbow. So yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on.
All right, I'm done.
All
I'm
right.
done. I'm sorry.
In our next search for what's the next big thing that's gonna bump the hobby. I know that you've mentioned this in previous years past. I don't like talking about crypto. I'm not a huge I'm not a huge crypto fan. I do not own any crypto whatsoever. I've never believed in crypto, but it is here. It is what it is. But crypto actually this past week hit a 2-year high in terms of pricing. And I know that you've mentioned in the past that the prices of Pokemon cards usually directly correlate to how well, especially on the high end, it correlates to how well crypto is doing. So I'll let you. I'm gonna wash my hands of this, and I'm gonna let you take over for the rest of the segment.
I will say I've seen a few accounts that are very crypto heavy accounts start posting again a little bit more frequently, and so that's a sign. I've done some crypto here and there, and I've talked to some friends who are really into crypto that also
Big
like Pokemon
crypto
as well.
guy, big crypto
But
guy.
I will say when I see certain accounts start posting more, I just know it's doing well. I don't need to go look at the prices. It's like, must be up today. Seeing some activity. But no, it's also good. It's also a good market indicator. If that general space is doing well, like it's good to offload some big stuff. It's good. They want to balance their portfolios and put more into us. And I'm happy to take their money. I mean, if they want to take the risk in crypto, and to me, I know we're an alternative asset, but I feel much safer being in our hobby than out there. So I'll take their money all day if they want to share the love. Let's say.
All right, so that is it on crypto and our main topics for this week. All right, final segment of the week. We have Collector's Corner, my favorite regularly occurring segment that we have, where Zach and I get to share a single card or cards from our collection that we kind of just want to showcase and talk about. And my card of the week, I will go first this week, is the Japanese version of the Gold Star Suicune. I always find it fascinating when we talk about trios of cards. We have our Zapdos, our Articunos, your Moltres. In this case, we have the Suicune, the Entei, and the Raikou. Generally, with the set of legendary beasts, because we have established many times in this podcast already that they are EVs. They do not actually have any designation of actual species. That they are legendary beasts, not dogs, not cats, beasts. Zach sent me a very beautiful playmat with all three of them. I actually have it right here. I can't show it to you. But for some reason, this might be the Pokemon crystal effect or just Pokemon design effect, because the Suicune generally always prices higher than the other two beasts. No one knows why. Entei had its own movie. One of the Pokemon movies prominently featured Entei, but also we obviously have the Pokemon Crystal game that came out so many years ago. I think like the sticker price on a first edition Suicune is around like 4,000 USD. For some reason I'm always a sucker for Suicune cards.
Mhm.
The Neo Revelation one, beautiful. The shiny present lottery one, also a very nice looking card. But yeah, just fun card to have around. I have a bunch of others here. Let me see if I have another one here. I have another Suicune kicking around here somewhere. Let me see. Aha, I do have one. This one is not crazy high value, but it's like a Poke Park Suicune card. They
Nice.
always hit. They always hit with the artwork on Suicune cards. I don't know why, but they always do. So they're fun to have. Suicune cards. Species collectors love Suicune.
I mean, Crystal is my favorite game growing up. So, I mean, it's like anytime you see a Suicune, you just get a little happy, you know. And the card's traditionally priced like way higher than, you know, Entei and Raikou in the past. Like, you know, so.
I think I told this story once, but I worked an entire summer at a coffee shop, and my first big purchase that I made when I was younger. So Nintendo Power, when Nintendo Power was still around, they actually had an exclusive Game Boy Advance that had the same. I don't know if you remember what the Pokemon Crystal cartridge looked like. It was like kind of like translucent blue. So exclusive to Nintendo Power, they actually had a translucent blue Game Boy Advance that you could buy directly from them with Pokemon Crystal. So I saved all my money for that year. Well, not all of it, but I spent. And then at the end, when I got my paycheck, the first thing I bought was that bundle directly from Nintendo. And this is before I was like, I didn't tell my parents I was doing it, so I was 14 years old at the time, and I literally mailed straight cash in the mail.
Dude.
Like
Dude.
straight, I mailed straight cash in the mail. I think I had some like coins in there as well. It wasn't like all bills.
You wanted that. You wanted
I
that
wanted
Crystal.
it. I didn't want to tell my parents, so I just thought this was the easiest way I was going to do it. In hindsight, probably not the best ideas in the world, but eventually it did get back to me. So they did mail me my Crystal limited edition Crystal Game Boy Advance as well as Pokemon Crystals. So
Good people, man.
good people on Nintendo, right? So yeah, it made its way back to me. But what do you got? What do you got for me this week? Is it another error card? Tell me it's an error card.
Okay, technically this is not an error card.
No,
but it is a variant of a very popular card.
Who are you, and what have you done with the real Zach?
Oh man, I think there are many error collectors that would also collect this just because it's a cool variant. So collectors from Europe will appreciate this card more than non-European collectors, just because that's where it was mostly distributed. And so, if you know, with base set, if you're thinking of a beautiful fire lizard that's out there, a Charizard, they had what a lot of people were calling to be a fourth print, but it was actually, you know, the correct term is Nighttime 2000 because it was really the eighth, you know, printing of base set, where, you know, they changed some of the colors in the card. So instead of like some of the purple and stuff, they kind of made it a little bit lighter. And if you compare like base set cards from Legendary Collection to like a normal unlimited base or shadowless base, you'll actually see the differences as well. And so the Nighttime 2000, you know, Pokemon set that came out is actually the first set to include some of these color changes. And so really what this is the Charizard. It's a PSA 9. And it is, you can tell the copyright date down here in the bottom, 1999-2000. It's that sort of last version of the basic Charizard that came out. You can see it no longer really has like the purple line sort of coming out. It's kind of like it's a little bit lighter. The card has a little bit different colors to it. And so I had someone ask me about this card, and so I pulled it out to take some photos, and it was, you know, a card that's not cool. You know, I wasn't planning to sell it, but it's the card that I've just had in my collection sitting around, and it's a very mint card too. So when you look at it, it's got like, you know, really no edge wear. I mean, it's got one corner nick down here, but that's really the only thing wrong with it. And it's one of those that like you look at it, you get a nice copy of a 9, you keep it. I think a lot of times, you know, if you have like 10 9s, maybe you sell them and you just keep the best one. This is one of those instances where this is just a really nice looking copy, so I just held on to it. But fourth print Charizard, you know, not the correct term. That's the term we use for like so long. So it's still the same term I think of when people ask me which Charizard it is.
Good luck getting PSA to get a label change on that one.
Oh yeah. Well, I think they label it now. I mean, I think they do now. It's just I just don't want to
Do
pay
they?
them to do it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, they do it now. I know TCA. We talked about like card ass last week and like how TCA refuses like to designate between red and green of those cards, even though it's like the most obvious thing ever. So shout out to Rusty for trying to push the hobby a little bit forward. But yeah, it's cool that they actually qualify those cards. That's
Yeah, they
interesting.
do, you know.
I definitely did not think they would do that, but I guess
Well,
I gotta give them more credit.
Well, I finished my whole 192000 base set, you know, then they started doing it, and it's like, "So, you're gonna get it relabeled?" Like, "Oh, the pop's
No.
only this or that for that card." And I'm like, "I'm not gonna pay them $1,000 for them to tell me what I already know." Like, you
Yeah.
know, and I get their stance, it costs them so much money to do it, but it's like, no, like, I'd rather go buy, you know, another one of these raw or something than do that, so
Yeah, yeah, I hear
oh,
you. I
baby.
hear you.
2
All
awesome
right,
collection cards.
ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of questions last week. We had a couple questions from the same person, so we are just gonna. Usually, we have collector's corner, so we're gonna shelf that for this week. So if you guys want a collector's, not collector's corner, as a viewer question
Viewer
section,
questions.
if you want a viewer question section, make sure you add your viewer questions, and Zach and I will read them out for you guys next week. But with that, brings us to the close of season 2, episode 2 of the Next Gen TCG podcast. Bear with us as we continue to try to keep doing a regular schedule for this podcast. We're trying our best, but we're both still having a lot of fun doing it. So we will try to get more episodes to you as soon as humanly possible. You have any closing thoughts for us, Zach?
First CollectCon of the year is coming up in about a week or so in Dallas. So we're going to get the whole slew of the 12 2024 shows coming up. There's always a lot of good stories, a lot of good deals, a lot of good people you see coming to these events. So, you know, the next episode will probably be after that. And hopefully we'll have some good stories, maybe some awesome deals I could share with the larger audience here and, you know, keep you guys in the loop of what's going on in the hobby.
My final thoughts: never bet against Mahomes.
Yeah, that's the truth.
At least
Man.
for the next 5 years. Never bet against Mahomes.